Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is me, once again, screaming into the void of the internet. I've been making these videos a bit more because I've just been having a lot going on mentally, I feel. It's like, I don't like saying anxiety, but I basically describe it as performance anxiety in the sense of there's so much that I want to do, there's so much that I want to, get going. I want to, get the ball going. And it really just seems like if there is a ball, if I have a ball, either two things. It's microscopic and I can't get any momentum going, or the ball is massive and I'm literally on like a freaking hill trying to push this thing upward. We're not just talking about like some kind of big rock here. We're talking a full on boulder that I have to do so much just to get the freaking momentum going, because there's just this massive slope that I have to push it up. And I'm just really hoping that I can get it going. And just hope that I can at least just have, even if it's not like just a flat plane, like just have the slope be like, not as steep, you know? But I kind of want to talk about something about generalization because while I was talking to, someone in the comments, and as I've been making a bit more videos about like my disdain for ratchets, I kind of want to talk about generalization and what my thoughts on like groups are in particular, because people might believe that, like, say I'm racist. Not that I really give a rat's arse, because I'm gonna be honest. I think that there are absolutely valid reasons why you might grow to hate a group, but I think viewing a group generally is not the same as viewing an individual. Generally, for me, this is kind of how I like judge groups, right? If there's a particular group and there is a reputation about that group that is known to generally be the truth, I will usually be a bit more inclined to say, okay, there are reasons why this is the way that this is, and I'm going to at least be cautious of them. But as an individual, I will always give them the chance to prove it correct or incorrect, right? So for me, right, I'm a nibba, a blizzax, a brother, whatever you want to call it, right? If somebody sees me, I think that they absolutely have a right to generally assume that, okay, I'm probably going to try and commit a crime because, hey, people around here, people around where I have been, well, maybe not around this neighborhood, but around my previous neighborhood, like they shot up stores and they would do drive-bys, they be selling drugs and all kinds of stuff. So if you saw that on a consistent basis and you felt that, okay, here's one of the nibbas, the brothers, the blizzacs coming, he's going to be, selling drugs, you're more inclined to believe it. But then I feel this is kind of where, like, again, the individual aspect come in. Like, if you start hearing me speak and stuff like that, you'll probably realize, hold up, this guy isn't saying nigga, 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 or like some kind of vulgarity. I can't even speak right now. And just so you know, guys, like, I'm fine with cussing and stuff like that. I'll say bitch, fuck, shit, all that stuff. I just don't like saying it because that's all I've heard all my life around. It makes me feel like I'm still in the ghetto, So that's kind of why, like, if you think I'm being like a air quotes goody two shoes when I like don't use vulgarity, it's not because I feel like, oh, I'm above it. It's just I just don't like saying it. I really don't. I hear it so much in the hood. I hear it so frequently that it's like just hearing those words just gives me. It just makes me feel like I'm amongst them, and I just really don't like to do that. I make damn sure to differentiate myself from that. So that's kind of why I don't really say it. But I feel like if somebody hears me speaking, they'll be like, whoa, you don't sound like them. And so they realize very quickly that, yeah, I may, look like them, but they're not of me. And vice versa. Because something that I really don't like is that some people, when they start getting too deep in the generalization, they stop seeing you as an individual and they all see you as a group member. And while that's true for some who don't, want to be an individual, you know, the people who make it very clear that, they don't like it, and then the ones that come along and go, oh, well, clearly, what the heck are you talking about? You're just like them. No, That would be like me saying, all right, look, you see you who comes from the suburbs? Well, you clearly act like some inbred hillbilly in like, say, like the boonies, like in freaking Georgia or something like that. And that's obviously not you. Sure, those people may look like you just because they have like the same skin pigmentation and what we like to identify race as and whatnot, but you know damn well that sure they may look like you, but they are not of you. Who you are of is usually the way that I feel, the kind of culture that you're around, the kind of people you hang around, the kind of values that you take in. That's usually like who you are of. You know, not necessarily just people who look like you. There's a lot that goes on to, in my personal opinion, what you want to take in as an individual. People like to say that you're a product of your environment, and I think that that's partially true, but I think there is a certain point that you have to choose what you're going to imbibe and allow to like mold you. You know what I mean? I have never allowed hood rat culture and ghetto-ness and ratchetness and all this garbage. I've never allowed it to mold me. You know, I don't allow people to tell me what I'm supposed to like. I don't allow people to tell me, what hobbies I'm supposed to find amusing, what kind of doctrines I should take in, you know. And if people, you know, if Nibbas and Blizzacs and brothers were to hear this, specifically the hood rats, right? They would interpret me as an Uncle Tom. They would interpret me as someone who would be on the plantation, like essentially, keeping them in line, siding with air quotes massa. That's their words, not mine. So for me, when I think about generalization, I think that there is general truth in generalization, but that general truth should not stop you from seeing someone as an individual. I think you should always allow someone to show who they are as an individual, and then you make a judgment call off of the information that they showed you. Did they prove the information right? You know? Or did they show that, hey, listen, despite what you may assume, my character is different? Because listen, I'm going to say this again. I think that people have a right to assume what they're going to assume. Despite what people may think about air quotes racism and prejudice and stuff like that, you do have to be careful with certain things. Because like I've always used this analogy, right? Let's say that you have a family and you're in a crime-ridden neighborhood. The murder rate is 50%. Is it air quotes racist or prejudice if you said, hey, listen, I'm not taking y'all through this neighborhood? Like if somebody actually thinks that that's wrong, if they think that that's some kind of way that you view them as beneath you or something, they're insane. They don't have any skin in the game. They don't have a family that they have to protect or anything. They don't have anything they care about. So if they wanted to go as an individual, okay, that's on them. But if you have kids and a family, you have something that you need to protect. It's not just about you. This is not just a judgment call that's just going to affect you. That judgment call is going to affect everyone. And people can't put aside their little bias and their, egos aside for 5 seconds and just look at it from a logical perspective and understand that if you were a family, if you're a family man, if you're a parent of any kind, and you go through a murder neighborhood with a rate of 50%, you're out of your goddamn mind, and I pray for those kids because you are not parent material. But unfortunately, in today's day and age, they would, again, take this as, well, that's obviously a grace problem. You're a gracist, you're a bigot, you're misogynist, you're blah, 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 blah. It's hilarious to me that we are in an age where, despite all of the information, there are just people that don't want to accept, it is what it is. It doesn't mean you like it, but it means that you have to navigate it, right? It's like this, for example. I don't bring it up a lot, but, I do speak about it often. The fact of the matter is we are in a very gynocentric society, The fact of the matter is I can look and look and look and look for jobs, but it is being consistently shown statistically that jobs with this DEI hire are selecting females before males, at least 28%. They are 28% more likely to select females over males. Not because they do their jobs better, but just because they're females. But it's wrong to just straight up admit to that. You're being a misogynist because you admit that, hey, you are basically being ostracized in a way, you're being persecuted in a way, you're being oppressed in a way. It's wrong to admit that the judges in courts, if it's a crime, even if it's just something like say like a freaking car crash crime, right? Where they're still going to side with females more. That's wrong to say. You see what I mean? Like you have to you have to be willing to just not give a rat's arse at a certain point, because what I realize is most people are just going to go with the flow because they're sheep. You know, you can say it all you want, but it's like as you live it, it blows you away more. It blows you away because it's like, oh, how the heck did these people live this long being a sheep? How did they live this long making these choices or lack of choices and just going with the flow? You know, going with the flow in one aspect could just be like remaining calm and stuff like that. Then there's going with the flow where it's like they just take away all your individuality and you just move forward, and it's like you know that they're not looking out for your best interest. So how the heck did they get this far? You know, maybe the excuse me, maybe the culture at the time wasn't nearly as corrupt, but I don't know, because this is all I know. All I know is a corrupt culture that basically ostracizes me, and treats me as lesser than. Not because of this color of my skin, like some jackasses are gonna think, but mainly, in my opinion, just because of what I got in between my legs. I feel like if you are a rational male, in general these days, they don't prioritize you. They don't see you as something to take hold of. And again, I can use a prime example of this, like again in the workforce where they're just selecting females. Listen, I have called places, like I'm talking, guys, like this isn't like like these neighborhoods are just like side by side when I'm calling them and stuff like that. I'm calling restaurants, whether it's like Olive Garden, Applebee's, and I'm hearing ratchets. I'm hearing ratchets in department stores, and I'm seeing them as like the main people being chosen. And if they're not ratchets, they're like some purple haired, color haired freaking wokey, and they're usually all chicks. And if they aren't chicks, then they're troons. So they'll still consider them chicks. And there's a reason why most guys that want to become a troon make sure that they're going to the female side, because they see the benefits. They see the benefits. They see them. But it's wrong for me to make an assumption with the general data that is presented. Again, I think generalization where you think it's just all objective can be bad, but I think there is general truth in generalizations. I think there is general truth in that. But it's a truth that people don't really feel comfortable with, They personally feel like you should always leave leeway out and just believe that, okay, give people the benefit of the doubt, but people are consistently showing you most of the time that they don't want to break the mold. They want to fit in. And if it means like doing negative crap, they'll do it, I can say this as someone, again, who came from the Blizzax community. Most people don't aspire to anything in that community. They don't. They think having a father is something to make fun of. They think pursuing education, and listen, I don't mean education like college or anything like that. I just mean like actually giving a rat's arse with learning. They think that's nerdy. One of the things I loved doing when I was younger is reading nonfiction books. I loved nonfiction books. I loved learning about nature. I loved learning about biology. I loved learning about space. But I couldn't share that with people. Because the thing is, like, I think while I don't interact with people, I know like how people operate. I know how people operate. And so I knew that if I showed my hobbies, in school, for example, I would get severely bullied, more than I already like did a bit back in the day. Like there was essentially only one time period where I was happy in school, and I still remember it to this day. It was in 6th grade because I went to a rich school for 1 year. And that was the only time that I was ever happy. Only time I was ever happy. The school to this day was called Richards, I think. It was nice because the teachers didn't give up on the kids, and they weren't like, around ratchets. It felt like it was an environment where you could actually learn. And I think maybe that's why a lot of people, like have a hard time learning, because they're not in an environment where they actually learn. Maybe they're born into poverty, like I said, where the teachers just don't give a rat's arse because the parents don't give a rat's arse about their kids, and so since the parents don't give a rat's arse, they teach their kids not to give a rat's arse, and so no one gives a rat's arse, and so it doesn't really create an environment where anyone wants to learn, you know. And this is kind of what I get at with this whole like generalization thing, like when I look at issues like that, and I generally come to a conclusion like this is kind of why I say stuff like, and I'm not going to make this like the next topic because this video has gone on long enough, but this is kind of what brings me to topics like, yeah, I think that there should be like selective reproduction. You know, if you don't really give a rat's arse about the quality of kids that you bring into the world, then why should you be allowed to? You're not going to actually give a rat's arse about them. You're not going to care about making sure that they have the best possible care. So why should you be allowed to? I think that's a question that is worth asking, especially in a market like this, in a hyper competitive market where job security isn't promised. Like just the other day, I mean, for example, I was basically put on hold. Someone responded to my application, but they put me on hold because I wanted full time. They said, "Oh, sorry, you want it full time. I'm going to put you on hold." I emailed them. I respond immediately saying, "Oh, listen, I'm fine with part time. Because maybe I could turn the part time into full time eventually, right?" And they never responded. Like, it's insane. But you, again, making a generalization with the data that you are given is seen as a bad thing. Because you said something as outrageous as the fact that, hey, this is a hyper competitive market that is severely limiting opportunities to people. And instead of wanting, your kids to go through that, if you can't offset their suffering in some capacity, then maybe you shouldn't have them. And that is seen as crazy. That is seen as, say, for example, "Oh, you're trying to take over my reproductive rights," which I think is funny because, if someone wants to talk about reproductive rights, explain how someone, if I do have a kid with somebody, can essentially ignore my reproductive rights and just murder my kid. So, yeah. But in conclusion, again, I want to say this. I don't really care if someone found what I said to be, you know, racist or anything of that matter, if they want to call me an Uncle Tom, because I am someone who is willing to look at things from a perspective that makes people uncomfortable. And a lot of people do not like seeing life from a perspective that makes them uncomfortable, even if it's not something extreme. Let's say, for example, how I talk about my life, what I want to do and get going to like live comfortably. And I see someone struggling, and I go, dude, what if you just stop spending excessive money? Some of these people will look at you like you just dropped a safe on their head. What do you mean? I don't need to live life, trying to constantly upgrade the cars and, have all this credit card debt that I can't pay off. They'll look at you insane because some of them don't like seeing reality through a lens that they haven't been taught. It makes them uncomfortable. And that's not something extreme. So just imagine when it's something extreme, like, again, recognizing patterns in groups of people, But again, this isn't like, say, a response to like a comment. It's just something that I was thinking about because I think generalizations, whilst a lot of people think that they're a bad thing, I think that they exist for a reason. I think there is data that is collected and observations that are made, not necessarily just from a scientific standpoint, just from people watching. You give data all the time with your behavior, with your body language, of what you do. And if you give people enough data, they're usually going to formulate an opinion, right? You watch someone long enough, you watch their tendencies, they're going to formulate an opinion. Hey, this is an introvert. Hey, this is an extrovert. Hey, this person just wants to be seen, etc., etc. So, it's not like you have to, again, live by that data. You're a human being. There are reasons that you act the way that you act. For example, how you act on work is obviously not how you're going to act at home. Unless you're, again, like a very charismatic person that can, like, just sway people's opinions. You're probably going to act as professional as you can at work. And then at home, maybe you can be a goofball. Like, there's obviously... there's obviously, subjectivity that can get into that, but still, I think that generalizations exist for a reason, you know, and that it's fine to go through life leaning into those generalizations a bit more. So long as you allow it not to fully take over your grasp of perception, so long as you allow it to assist how you navigate life, but not completely determine it. But I'm gonna conclude it there. I'm pretty exhausted. I'm still frustrated with my last endeavor about like work, but I'm just gonna keep moving forward, I guess. Because that's all you can do. All you can really do, ideally, is just keep moving forward. Right? I have 2 job interviews coming up. They're both in fast food, unfortunately, but I'm pretty desperate at this point. Like I said, I do think that it's kind of like just performance anxiety because I just want so much to just get something going, and it's just pretty hard to do. I'm really hoping that maybe this time it'll turn around, but the fact of the matter is this month is coming to an end, and I did tell myself that if I don't get something going by this month being over, I'm just gonna call my friend in, and we're just gonna go back to Miami and try and make something happen because he can just hook me up with a job, and I think that that's sad. Not that I'm, going to be mad to live with him or something. I just think it's sad that you're trying your hardest, and it's like the only way that you're getting employed these days is if you just know someone. It's just insane to me. It's not sustainable in any capacity, but people don't want to talk about it. They want to pretend like it's not a problem and that you just need to do more. Like I've literally spoken to employment agencies just recently, and they're essentially like gatekeeping jobs. They're hiding jobs behind like certain places. It's almost like you need to pay these people. Some of these people want money. Like these agencies, they want money to like show you jobs and hook you up with jobs. Like I have no clue how this is legal. I have absolutely no clue how like gatekeeping jobs behind money and stuff like that. Like how is that? Because you just being able to apply to the job doesn't guarantee that you get it. But you need to like join these agencies and give some of them money. I'm not saying this is what I did, but this is what I was doing when I was like calling and doing research and asking around. Like they're gatekeeping certain jobs. So some of these jobs that I said that I couldn't find around me and stuff like that, they popped up when I started like interacting with these agencies. So there's just a lot of BS going on. I just really don't know how to make sense of everything. But I'm gonna keep doing my hardest. But this month's almost out, and if it's not out, then if I don't get what I want by the time it's out, I'm just gonna go. It's not like I'm gonna go like the moment that it's like, the end of the month, but I'm just gonna ask my friend, hey, are you still wanna like come get me? And I know he's gonna say yes, because he does miss me. And I do miss him, dude. I really do. And I'll just move back down there, and it'll at least be better because it's more of a city in the sense that everything's close together. So walking distances will be a heck of a lot better than, here. So again, I want to thank you all for listening to my crazy arse talk. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. I hope that you guys hang in there like I hang in there. This week's been pretty rough though, because I'm telling you, man, just being that close to having a job and then just getting screwed over, man, man, it's irritating. But I know that that's what a lot of us are dealing with right now, So, guys, hang in there. Hang in there. There is life beyond your pain. There is life beyond your pain. I know that my life isn't necessarily the best, but for God's sakes, I was living in a car for a while. I did have to worry about if I was going to have to freaking stab somebody because they were looking in the vehicle and looking like they were, kind of judging like, should I try and get in this thing, and so there is life beyond your pain. And I know I'm like, kind of just in the crapper right now, but I know that I can make something of myself, and I don't know if it will happen. I'm not going to lie to you, but I know that I can, and I'm going to continue to try and make that happen. So I hope that you guys do too. Thank you all for listening. God bless. I will see you next time.